Promotion, recognition, and advancement. A manager receives the promotion she's been chasing for 3 years. The title change comes with a 22% salary increase, an office with actual walls instead of fabric partitions, and her name added to the leadership distribution list. That first week, she arrives early without the usual dread. She volunteers for projects she would have avoided the month before. When friends ask how work is going, she answers with genuine enthusiasm instead of the careful neutrality she'd perfected over the previous 18 months. 6 weeks later, the alarm goes off and that familiar weight returns to her chest. Recognition has a peculiar power to reset our tolerance for situations that were draining us just days before the validation arrived. A promotion, an award, a public acknowledgement, these moments flood our system with proof that our suffering meant something, that the path we questioned so intensely was actually leading somewhere. The dissatisfaction that felt urgent and undeniable suddenly seems like impatience, like we just needed to wait a little longer for the system to recognize our value. This isn't manipulation by employers, though organizations certainly benefit from the pattern. It's how our own psychology works. The human brain craves evidence that its investments were sound. When we've poured years into a career that stopped fitting, when we've swallowed frustrations and postponed desires, external validation arrives like a retroactive justification. You were right to stay. You were right to push through. The promotion proves it wasn't wasted time. Except the promotion doesn't actually change what made you miserable. It changes your title, your salary, sometimes your responsibilities. But if the core problem was the industry's values clashing with yours, or the work itself draining rather than energizing you, or the constant performance of enthusiasm for something that stopped mattering years ago, recognition doesn't touch that. What it does is make talking about those problems feel ungrateful. How do you tell someone you're thinking about leaving right after they promoted you? How do you admit, even to yourself, that the achievement you wanted so badly doesn't feel like you thought it would? A civil engineer I knew spent 4 years building towards senior engineer status. He'd mapped out the technical skills required, documented his projects meticulously, prepared for the promotion conversation with his manager for weeks. When it finally came through, he felt euphoric for exactly 9 days. Then he was sitting in the same meetings that had been slowly suffocating him, writing the projects that no longer sparked any curiosity, reporting to the same organizational structure that prioritized appearance over substance. The new title sat on his email signature like a gilded cage, prettier than before, but still a cage. Recognition resets the timer on our tolerance because it provides narrative coherence right when we need it most. The story of grinding through difficulty makes sense if it culminates in acknowledgement. Suffering without payoff is just suffering. Suffering that leads to validation becomes a hero's journey. Our brains desperately want the hero's journey version, so when the promotion arrives, we unconsciously reshape our recent past into a story of productive struggle rather than misallocated energy. The effect is temporary, but we rarely acknowledge that while we're in it. We treat the renewed motivation as revealing our true feelings, as if the weeks or months of dreading Sunday evenings were the aberration and this post-promotion enthusiasm is the real us. We settle into a renewed sense that we made the right choice, that the doubts were just impatience, that we simply needed this tangible proof of our value to remember why we started this path in the first place. But recognition doesn't repair a fundamentally misaligned situation any more than an anniversary gift fixes a relationship built on incompatibility. What it does is buy time for you to tolerate what wasn't tolerable before, for the organization to retain someone who was close to leaving, for everyone to avoid the disruptive question of whether this path still makes sense. The promotion becomes another sunk cost, another investment that makes leaving feel wasteful. You can't quit now, they just promoted you. What would people think? What would you tell yourself about those 4 years of preparation? The cruelest part is how recognition can arrive precisely calibrated to your threshold for leaving. Not consciously, most managers aren't calculating your breaking point. But organizations develop rhythms of retention, promotion cycles that happen just often enough to keep people engaged just long enough. You get close to done, close to walking away, and something shifts. A new opportunity, a salary adjustment. Your project gets highlighted in the company meeting. Just enough oxygen to keep the commitment alive for another quarter, another year. Meanwhile, the question you were finally ready to ask yourself, is this actually what I want, gets buried under the noise of achievement. And the cycle continues, each recognition resetting your tolerance, each award extending your stay until you look up one day and realize you've built an entire career on a foundation of intermittent validation rather than sustained alignment with who you actually are. The increased salary becomes its own trap, and quickly. That 22% raise doesn't just change what you earn, it recalibrates what you think you need. The apartment you were fine with last year suddenly feels too small for someone at your level. You start browsing neighborhoods you previously dismissed as out of reach. The car lease you signed 18 months ago now seems embarrassingly modest compared to what your colleagues drive. Within 3 months, your expenses have quietly expanded to meet your new income, sometimes exceed it. This isn't frivolous spending, necessarily. It's psychological adjustment. Your brain registers the promotion as evidence that you've moved into a different category of person, and that category comes with expected signifiers. You're not keeping up with abstract societal pressure. You're aligning your external life with your new professional identity. The problem is that each adjustment makes the cost of leaving exponentially higher. When you were making $73,000, walking away meant figuring out how to live on whatever came next. Now, at $89,000, it means dismantling a lifestyle you've built in just months, but which already feels baseline rather than luxury. The downtown loft, the gym membership that actually gets used, the vacation you booked without the usual months of financial anxiety. These aren't decadent, they're what you told yourself you'd have once you reached this level. And now they're leverage, keeping you tethered to the job that provides them. Status compounds the financial trap in ways that don't show up on a balance sheet. When you were mid-level, leaving was a private decision. Now you're visible. People know your title. Your family mentions your role at gatherings. Former classmates see your updated LinkedIn profile. The identity you've constructed isn't just internal anymore, it's social architecture. A colleague gets invited to speak on an industry panel. It's the first time anyone has asked for her expertise in a public forum. She spends 2 weeks preparing, delivers the talk to polite applause, gets tagged in a few LinkedIn posts. The speaking opportunity itself doesn't change her day-to-day work, which still involves the same grinding client demands and internal politics that were wearing her down. But now she's the kind of person who speaks at industry events. That identity feels too valuable to abandon, even though the work producing that identity is actively draining her. You do your best to make the story last. You tell your family and friends how much you love your job and that it has never been better. The performance isn't entirely dishonest. Some part of you does love certain aspects: the validation, the proof that you're capable, the relief of no longer feeling overlooked. What you're omitting is the growing gap between the role you're recognized for and the person you're becoming. But admitting that gap means explaining why the achievement everyone celebrated feels hollow, and that explanation makes you sound unstable, ungrateful, or confused about what you actually want. So you lean into the narrative, you emphasize the wins, minimize the cost, and hope that eventually the enthusiasm you're performing will become genuine again. You post about projects you're proud of while leaving out the Sunday evening dread. You mention the increased responsibility without noting that most of it involves managing problems you don't find interesting. You're curating your own story in real time, not for an audience, but to convince yourself that the promotion solved what needed solving. The higher you climb, the fewer people can relate to your specific struggle. Complaining about a six-figure salary to someone making $45,000 sounds obscene, even when the complaint isn't about money but about meaning. Your peer group shifts toward others at your level, and their conversations reinforce the idea that what you're experiencing is normal. Everyone feels the pressure, everyone sacrifices some alignment for advancement, everyone learns to tolerate aspects of work that don't fit perfectly. This normalization is seductive because it removes the question of whether you should leave and replaces it with strategies for coping with staying. You're no longer asking if this career makes sense. You're asking how to manage the stress it creates while maintaining the status it provides. The promotion didn't just reset your tolerance, it redefined the question you're allowed to ask yourself. 5 years ago, you might have left a job that felt this misaligned without much deliberation. Now you have a title that took years to earn, a salary that supports obligations you've accumulated, and a professional identity that feels too substantial to discard. Each element individually seems manageable, but together they form a structure that makes departure feel like dismantling your entire adult life rather than changing jobs. The stakes aren't actually higher, they just feel that way because you have more to visibly lose, and because walking away now means admitting that achievement and alignment aren't the same thing. That's the lesson recognition obscures. External validation can't repair internal misalignment. It can only make that misalignment more expensive to acknowledge. The pressure of success. Achievement arrives with its own gravitational pull. Each promotion, each recognition, each new level of success doesn't just change your circumstances, it reshapes the landscape of expectations around you and within you. Open a blank document and write down every benefit that came with your most recent promotion or significant recognition at work. Include everything: the salary increase, the title, the office or workspace change, the new responsibilities, the social acknowledgement. Be specific with numbers where possible: percentages, dollar amounts, square footage. The aim here is to quantify the tangible improvements, allowing for a clear assessment of what truly changed in your professional life. Now create two columns beneath that list. Label the left column "What this changed" and the right column "What this didn't change." Go through each benefit and honestly assess what it actually altered about your daily experience versus what remained identical. Most people discover something unsettling in this exercise. The salary increase might have changed your bank balance, but did it change how you feel on Sunday evenings? The new title might have impressed your family, but did it make your Tuesday meetings more meaningful? The corner office might have better lighting, but did it address why you feel drained by 3 o'clock every afternoon? Achievement creates a psychological trap. Ong 2021. Each promotion validates that you're good at what you do, which makes questioning whether you should be doing it feel like ingratitude or weakness. You've proven you can succeed here, so leaving becomes harder to justify to yourself and to others who've watched you climb. The expectations shift with each level. What impressed everyone at your previous position becomes the baseline at your new one. Your exceptional becomes their adequate. The bar rises, but your energy, your hours in the day, your capacity for stress, these don't automatically rise with it. You're expected to deliver more, manage more, strategize more, all while maintaining everything you did before. Bonjour 2026. There's also the weight of visibility. Success puts you on a stage. More people notice what you do, which means more people notice if you stumble. The freedom to experiment, to fail small, to try something different, that often shrinks as you advance. The stakes feel higher because they are higher, and that pressure accumulates with each new achievement. Return to your document and add a third column: what this cost. This isn't about money. Consider what you gave up to reach this level and what you're giving up to maintain it. Hours with family or friends, hobbies that used to restore you, physical health, mental space to think about anything beyond work, the quiet morning routine that used to center you before the day began. Success can become its own cage. The paradox deepens because each promotion makes leaving more complicated. You've worked years to reach this salary, this position, this level of influence. Walking away from it feels like wasting everything you've built. The sunk cost isn't just time and effort anymore. It's status, reputation, financial security, and the story you've told yourself and others about who you are and what you're building, the Decision Lab ND. But here's what the exercise often reveals. The things that didn't change in that second column are frequently the exact things you hoped achievement would fix. You thought the promotion would bring fulfillment, but it brought more responsibility. You thought recognition would quiet your self-doubt, but it amplified it. You thought advancing would make you feel more certain about your path, but it made you feel more trapped. Zegai 2025. This recognition doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're finally seeing clearly. Achievement was supposed to be the answer, and discovering it isn't can feel devastating. Yet that clarity, uncomfortable as it is, gives you something essential: the truth about what you're actually working toward and whether it's taking you where you genuinely want to go. Schedule a specific time this week to review what you've written. Not when you're exhausted after work, not during your commute. Set aside 30 minutes when you can think clearly without interruption. Read through all 3 columns slowly. Pay particular attention to anything in the "what this didn't change" column that you explicitly hoped the promotion would address. Did you think the recognition would make the work itself feel more meaningful? Did you expect the raise to compensate for the hours you're missing with people you love? Did you believe the new title would finally make you feel accomplished enough to relax? Write one sentence at the bottom of the document completing this phrase: "What I actually needed was," not what you needed from your employer or this career path, but what you needed from your life. Don't filter it. Don't make it reasonable or achievable or practical. Just write what's true. Keep this document somewhere accessible, not hidden in a subfolder you'll never open again, but somewhere you can return to when the next achievement arrives and temporarily convinces you that everything is fine now. Recognition complicates departure because it arrives precisely calibrated to your threshold for leaving. Just when dissatisfaction reaches critical mass, when you've mentally drafted the resignation email 3 times, validation appears and recalibrates everything. Your employer didn't necessarily plan this, though some do, but the timing reveals how carefully you've been broadcasting your limits through small signals you didn't realize you were sending. The trap isn't the promotion itself, it's what the promotion makes you invest next. That 22% salary increase doesn't just change your bank account. Within 3 months, it changes your baseline, the apartment you could finally afford in the better neighborhood, the car that doesn't require holding your breath at every stoplight, the ability to say yes when friends suggest the nicer restaurant. These aren't frivolous, they're recalibrations of what normal feels like. And now leaving means not just changing jobs, but downgrading a life you've barely begun to inhabit. Write down your current monthly expenses, not what you think you spend. Actually, open your banking app and calculate what you spent last month on rent, car payments, subscriptions, groceries, everything. Now subtract that 22%, or whatever it was, salary increase, and recalculate what your budget would look like without it. Most people discover they've unconsciously architected a life that requires the recognition they just received. The promotion didn't just validate your past, it purchased your future compliance. Achievement also escalates your social investment in staying. Before the promotion, you could complain freely to friends about work frustrations. After, those same complaints sound different. You're no longer commiserating, you're confessing that success didn't satisfy you, which makes people uncomfortable. They want your achievement to mean what achievements are supposed to mean. Your dissatisfaction threatens their belief that reaching the next level will finally bring contentment. So you start editing your truth. When your parents ask about the new position, you emphasize the positives because their pride in your advancement is genuine and you don't want to diminish it with your ambivalence. When colleagues congratulate you, you perform gratitude because anything less seems like ingratitude. Each performance strengthens the public story, and the gap between that story and your private experience widens until you're living two separate narratives. Look at your LinkedIn profile or resume right now. Read how you've described your current role and recent advancement. Notice the language you chose. Is it accurate to your actual experience? Or is it curated to project a trajectory of increasing success and satisfaction? You're not being dishonest exactly. You're highlighting certain truths while omitting others. But those omissions accumulate. The story you've told the world becomes harder to contradict with the story you're living. Your peer group shifts with each promotion, too. You're no longer comparing your experience to people at your previous level. You're comparing it to others who've reached similar positions. And most of them, you'll notice, express the same careful neutrality you've perfected. The implicit message: this is just what this level feels like. The pressure, the performance, the gap between the title and the satisfaction, everyone manages it. Questioning whether you should be here at all becomes unthinkable because everyone around you has normalized exactly what you're struggling with. This week, identify one person in your field who left a senior position for something entirely different. Not someone who moved laterally to a competitor, someone who actually exited the path. Find their story online, or if you know them personally, ask if they'll talk for 20 minutes. You're not looking for permission or a blueprint. You're testing whether departure is even conceivable, whether anyone you respect has chosen it and survived. What recognition ultimately does is transform your situation from a problem to solve into a privilege to protect. Before the promotion, you could acknowledge that something fundamental wasn't working. After, you're defending not just a job, but proof that your choices were sound, that your judgment was correct, that the years of endurance led exactly where they were supposed to lead. But achievement doesn't change what you wake up thinking about at 3 in the morning. It doesn't alter whether the work itself resonates with who you're becoming. It doesn't address the quiet erosion happening beneath the surface while you're performing capability and gratitude. The question isn't whether recognition feels validating. It absolutely does. The question is what it's validating. Your competence, your ability to navigate organizational systems. But does it validate that this path aligns with what you actually want from the limited time you have? That's different, and confusing those two validations is how people spend decades succeeding at something that's slowly hollowing them out. You're allowed to be good at something and still choose to leave it. Achievement and alignment aren't the same thing. One proves you can, the other asks if you should.